Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I thank the gentleman for his substitute amendment and his comments about the role of credit checks in hiring decisions. This substitute amendment prohibits the use of credit checks for the majority of hiring decisions, with only a few exceptions, where federal, state, local law, or regulation dictates otherwise, and when the information contained in a credit report is used in a national security investigation. Those are the only exceptions. In instances where credit reports are permitted as a condition of employment, the potential employer must disclose to the applicant the reasons for obtaining a consumer report. Now, I understand the gentleman's concerns with the potential for an undesirable credit file to negatively impact a candidate's chances of being selected for a job. And I also believe in second chances, and that we should not assume that a consumer's past credit history correlates directly with his or her work ethic or performance. Credit checks obviously should not be the end-all, be-all in hiring. Having said that, employers, I believe, should have a full picture of a potential employee during the hiring process, and this is particularly true in certain sectors of the economy, in the financial services sector, where employees have broad access to personal and financial information to millions of American consumers. And so in some employment settings, a credit background, frankly, is a qualification. For example, it may be beneficial for an asset management firm to know that a client manager is highly indebted, or an employee of a bank, for example. I think if you're an employer or a manager, you would want to know that. You would want to know whether or not someone whose job it is to exercise financial responsibility in their job performance. I think that's altogether appropriate for a prospective employer to consider this. But I want to make another point too, and that is that in our growing economy, in this booming economy, where we are experiencing the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, in a situation where wages are rising faster than in a decade's time. This is the fastest wage growth in a decade, where we had the chairman of the Federal Reserve just testifying to us yesterday, talking about how strong economic growth is and how healthy the labor market is. I really don't think this is an issue. I don't think it's an issue at all. I think employers, and anecdotally at least in central and eastern Kentucky, employers are desperate for workers. In the country, if you look at the statistics in the country, it's 1.6 million job openings more than unemployed Americans. Frankly, employers are begging for all kinds of employees, whether they have a positive credit history or a negative credit history. They're just begging people to apply for these open jobs. And by the way, it's kind of connected to the minimum wage debate that we're going to have next week as well. Because this whole idea of raising the minimum wage, when employers are so desperate for workers, they're willing to hire someone with a bad credit history and no skills for $20 an hour. I mean, this is something that employers in my district tell me. They're willing to train unskilled workers for a $20 an hour job today. And they don't care if they've got a bad credit history or not. So I don't think this is really needed, especially given the health of our labor market right now. But I think in general, and this is my final point, I really do appreciate the gentleman, the intentions behind the gentleman's bill. But I think that we've had a long, long history in this country of at-will employment. And at-will employment means that it is a voluntary arrangement between an employer and an employee. And some employers may deem a credit score, a credit history, to be pertinent material information, especially in those kinds of jobs where someone's financial responsibility credentials actually make a difference in their job performance and in their qualifications. So I think this is an example, with all respect, of the federal government once again sticking its nose in a place where it has no business being in. Frankly, employers should have the freedom in this country to hire who they want, and employees, prospective employees and job seekers, should have the freedom to select employers that they want. And I don't think there should be undue government interference in that traditional at-will employment situation. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment for these reasons, and I yield back.